Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, August 2nd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 31 days. The game against Michigan in 115 days. It is about to be fall camp season in Ohio State. We're going to be talking to Ryan Day a little later on today, and then fall camp starts tomorrow for the Buckeyes. Yes, football season really actually here. I'm joined today by Kevin Noon of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Wanted to talk about some of the stories we're most interested in watching this year at fall camp. Kevin, I think number one for pretty much every Ohio State fan is what would always be number one when there's a vacant quarterback position. Kevin, who's going to be the starting quarterback this year for the Ohio State Buckeyes? I feel like that's kind of the storyline number one this year.
It really is. I don't know if it's concern number one, but I think there's a big difference between what the concern is and what the story is. And at the end of the day, the story is going to be who's the quarterback. I mean, we sit there and we've seen this tremendous run at quarterback at Ohio State. Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, and now the next player is looking to cement his name in that legacy, whether it be Devin Brown or whether it be Kyle McCord. I mean, I think if it ends up being Tristan Gebbia, I think we got like some bigger concerns there, and there'll probably be some shows that come out of that, or true freshman Lincoln Kienholz. But between McCord and Brown, we're not going to get to see a ton of practice for spring ball or for fall ball, but that's not out of the ordinary. That's kind of SOP. So I'm not really lamenting that too much because I'm kind of used to that, but that's going to be something we're going to talk about. And the fact that we're getting to talk to the quarterbacks now, granted, we're not going to get a lot of insight, who leads? Well, nobody's really, not a single throw has been thrown in fall ball. But it is certainly the biggest storyline as you look at programs like Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, all bringing in new starters for them. And I say it that way because Tyler Buchner's now at Alabama, and he's started games before. But all three of these major marquee programs all breaking in new quarterbacks. And, of course, our focus will be on Ohio State.
And, it's almost a running joke on the beat that you always get the quarterbacks first, and you get the quarterbacks on day one when they say, well, we haven't started practice yet, so there's we're about to start practice, or we just started our first practice. You always get them right at the beginning of spring ball or fall camp, and it's before anyone can really have anything to say because they haven't done it yet. This year, we do get them. We get them today, but we also get them 3 weeks from today, Wednesday, August 23rd, to wrap up fall practice. So that's going to be when you're probably going to have a decision. I think if you're looking at when are they going to have a decision, they certainly are hoping to have a decision by that point. So that'll be an interesting storyline to follow throughout the course of the fall. I think Ohio State, the odds are, when I say the odds are, I mean literally the betting line has Kyle McCord as a significant favorite over Devin Brown. But that's going to be obviously something we're keeping an eye on throughout the fall. And yes, if it does end up being Tristan Gebbia or Lincoln Kienholz, something he's either going very, very wrong or very, very right for Ohio State, but we'll keep an eye on that throughout the course of the fall. One of the other things that we're going to be keeping an eye on this fall, and this might be the biggest concern on the team right now, the offensive line. How many positions, Kevin, do you feel like they have a couple returning starters, Donovan Jackson, Matt Jones? How many positions do you think they're entering fall camp feeling really, really comfortable with? This is definitely the guy who's going to be in this spot, snap number one against Indiana.
I'm going to go off the board a little bit. I'm going to say one. And this is why I'm going to say one is I'm not sure if Donovan Jackson stays at guard if they are not happy with what they have at tackle. Now, in a perfect world, I would say two, that it would be Matt Jones at one guard, it would be Donovan Jackson at the other guard, and that everything fits in, whether it's Josh Simmons or Josh Fryer or Tegra Shabola or somebody like that. Luke Montgomery's a name that we heard a lot of at Big Ten Media Day, stepping into those tackle positions. And then whether it's Carson Hinsman or Jacob James or somebody else stepping in at the center position. I think that I'll reverse the question and give you the answer of I think that there's three that we're really not sure about. But because we're not sure about three of them, I think that fourth position comes into play. Now, personally, I think Donovan Jackson needs to play guard. I think that he is a guard. I don't know if you're doing yourself any favors of putting him at tackle. If Donovan Jackson is 5%, 10%, 20% better than the rest of the tackles you have, or at least better than the second starting tackle that you have, you've got bigger problems, and there's a lot more stuff that we need to be talking about right now. So I think that we're going to see Jones and Jackson at guards, and then it's going to be figuring out tackle and center. But I think you were trying to trip me up there in seeing if I was going to think this through, and I was ahead of you, and I think I thought it through. And now, of course, you're going to be like, "But overthinking things, dude." But that's what I do. That's what I do. I overthink things.
Well, you started answering that question, and I'm giving you, nodding along with you, and then you said Donovan Jackson, and I went, because I feel like they're going to have one tackle they're feeling pretty good about. And if you were going to, I was thinking you were going to say there's a non-zero chance, not a big chance, but a non-zero chance that Matt Jones gets moved to center. If they're really not happy with center, you've seen Matt Jones. Matt Jones came in, he was rated as a center coming out of high school. He has played a little bit of center, and we've seen him working at center at times. I think he would prefer to stay at guard. I think they would prefer to have him stay at guard, much like Donovan Jackson on the other side of the line at guard. I think there's a non-zero chance that Matt Jones ends up the starter at center if they really aren't happy with any of their options. They've got plenty of other options. I don't think it's very likely. But if there was a guard getting moved, I would say Matt Jones might be more likely than Donovan Jackson. But again, this is very, very unlikely. But either way, you have, if you do move a guard, Enoch Vermahi's still there. Enoch Vermahi has played a bunch for this team. Enoch Vermahi is someone that I feel like they can trust. They started him in the Michigan game last year. I think that if you were to move one of the guards, you have another really good answer in Enoch Vermahi to slide in for whoever you move around. So that's either way, I think one, but really probably two is the answer. But no, you definitely did not overthink that. I think there's enough residual question there, but I do think those guys are the starting guards. I feel like Josh Fryer is going to be your starting left tackle, and every time Ryan Day talked about the right tackles, at Big Ten Media Days, he talked about them in the order of Tigger Shabola, Josh Simmons, Ryan Montgomery. So, am I overthinking this now? Is that kind of where the depth chart is entering the fall, if he's naming them in that order consistently?
Well, let me jump to the Matt Jones, and then I'll jump to that, because I got thoughts on both of them. I mean, I know that part of Matt Jones coming back was to play guard, because that is where the next level is. And, he wants to get that extra year at guard. Now, of course, everybody's a team player, and if the team needs him to go to center, then so be it. Maybe I'm just of the mindset of, I think that Carson Hinsman I'm not ready to declare that he's won the job, but I think that he performed well enough in the spring that I would be very surprised if he got, passed over. But, I don't know. And then as for the other tackle position, let me overthink you even more. Is it a case of we don't have a lot of information from Ryan Day about Josh Simmons, because we don't have a lot of information about Josh Simmons? I mean, he came in after spring. Sure, he's been able to work out with Mick and be able to spend time with the nutritionist and all that stuff, but he's not been able to do any real football activities in terms of an organized practice. So is it easier to sit there and put Tegra in the lead at this point, just because everything that we know about Josh Simmons is with him wearing red and black at San Diego State?
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. And you guys are going to be at practice on Thursday. You and Tony are going to be at practice on Thursday. My guess is you are going to see Tegra Shabola repping with the ones at that point. We are also going to be at practice next Friday, August 11th. I think there's a real possibility. That's going to be one of the first things I'm looking at next Friday is, okay, what order are they repping in at right tackle now? Because that's where the first day of practice just kind of gives you a data point. It's much like the start of the spring, where day one, we kind of write down where everyone is, okay. And then 2-3 weeks later, we look and we say, okay, here's how things have changed. And that really gives you a real idea where things are potentially headed. That could be something to keep an eye on. Who is repping with the ones day one? Who is repping with the ones a week in? And Ohio State is going to be has a lot of practices this week, or this month, so they're going to be well into their fall camp prep, even though it is just 1 week in. So that'll be something interesting to keep an eye on. On the other side of the ball, how often have we talked about Jim Knowles calling this a safety-driven defense? Well, who's going to be driving that defense? Who are going to be those safeties driving that defense? That, to me, on the defensive side of the ball, it feels like we know who the linebackers are. You have a pretty good sense who the defensive line is going to be. You got a decent sense who the corners are going to be. But the safeties, who's lining up where? How are they deploying people? How are they working in a guy like Sonny Styles, who might not necessarily be a starter, maybe, or maybe he will be? How are all these different pieces fitting together? That's something I'm super interested in watching this month.
Yeah, where does Jihad Carter fit in? They bring him in from Syracuse. You don't bring in transfers generally to sit there and say, okay, well, you're competing for third team reps, but no, they've got a lot of experienced guys. And is it a matter of, plugging the guys in the right places? Is it a matter of figuring out how to get the best 11 guys out there? There's going to be a lot of pieces. And I just think the secondary in general, figuring out how to get enough Sonny Styles out there. Where does Ole Miss transfer Davison Igbenison, where does he fit into the mix? Where does Jihad Carter fit into this mix? There's just a lot of question marks that I have there, and that is a storyline that I will be right there with you when I'm not watching quarterbacks, which is the easiest thing in the world to do. Your eyes just get drawn there, even though they're going to have them practicing in Hilliard. They're going to put them so far away from us. But I think that the secondary, especially with what we're going to see out of the safety position with three of them out there, with Sonny Styles kind of being a hybrid guy, how does all of that look? And are we going to see different types of packages? And are they going to sit there and, especially here on Thursday, they're going to be practicing how to practice. So we're not going to know anything. They could sit there and put whoever out there, and we're not going to gather a lot. And then with the practice on the 11th being BTN day, they know that all of that's going to be on TV. So, I think that there's going to be something said about maybe not letting too much information out there, but at the end of the day, all these guys have to be able to compete. And regardless of, if you're lining up with the ones or the twos, is it necessarily going to matter in terms of drill work?
And we've mentioned several names of transfers on this show. Davison Igbenogson, Jihad Carter, Josh Simmons, John Furlman, the long snapper. He's a transfer out of Arizona State. I think a lot of those new faces, whether they're transfers or some of the true freshmen, we've seen some of the true freshmen. Carnell Tate, for example, lost his black stripe in the spring. You've got some really promising true freshmen. We mentioned Luke Montgomery. You've got a bunch of guys coming in this summer now. Brandon Innes was considered potentially one of the more ready-to-go freshmen. He's showing up this summer, so this is our first real chance to watch Brandon Innes. It feels like every year this time of year, heard a lot about Lincoln Keenholz, like the quarterback. Every year this time of year, it's always about, okay, let's see the new guys too. I think there are a lot of new guys who could play maybe a bigger role than you'd traditionally think for a first-year player.
Well, and that's the thing. You got a team that's got a lot of veteran experience coming back, but when you're recruiting number 2 classes in the nation, there's something to be said about that as well. And how do these guys fit in? And it's going to be a long season, and a successful season is 15 games. But even with that, you come out, you start at Indiana. Week 4 is at Notre Dame. You got a couple of non-conference games at home for weeks 2 and 3. I think that you're going to sit there and see these guys get their trial run during some of these things. And we're going to be watching that in the spring or in the fall. I don't have my seasons right. I don't know why. I'm very interested in all of that. I really want to see what Tywone Malone looks like. That's somebody that I'm really interested in, the defensive lineman from Ole Miss, because it's going to be a position of need moving forward. I think Ohio State has an embarrassment of riches, especially at 3-Tech this year. But Tywone Malone is one of these transfers that you bring in knowing that you're going to get a couple of years out of him, or at least that's the hope. So, he's going to be there when you lose potentially the Mike Halls and the Tyleek Williams of the world, guys like that. So, I think transfer is going to be important. I'm looking forward to getting the roster in my hands to see the heights and weights and how all those things change. And sadly, we don't have the NC2A video game this year, so roster numbers don't mean much to me at this point, but I better get them down, because there will be a point where I'll be sitting in the press box. I'll be like, Tony, who the hell made that play? I have no idea. I don't recognize that number.
Yeah, jersey number changes are always fun to try and track during camp when they're not wearing jerseys with their names on them, and guys will sometimes be swap jerseys and wear someone else's number just to mess with us. Yeah, it is always a fun time. And, you mentioned Tywan Malone, the defensive tackle, another transfer that we didn't mention yet, Lorenzo Styles Jr., cornerback, Notre Dame transfer. He's going to be another one to keep an eye on this fall. Again, probably a longer-term proposition for him, not necessarily someone you're expecting to be starting week one at Ohio State after he not only transfers and joins a new team, but also switches sides of the ball. So probably a little bit more of a long-term thing with him, but also going to be interesting to see him out on the field with the Buckeyes as well. And we will be seeing him out on the field tomorrow. That will be Thursday, the first practice of the spring. We'll be there in the morning. Ryan Day talking along with the quarterbacks a little later on today. Lots of camp coverage rolling out starting today. Football season is here in Columbus. It's always kind of football season in Columbus, let's be honest. But really officially now, football season is here. And we're going to be talking about it all week, all month, and all for the rest of the year at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Kevin and Tony and I covering the team. Mark and Alex covering recruiting. And boy, there's some recruiting news coming this month for Ohio State as well, for good, bad, or indifferent. That is all coming this month. Plus Devin and Mikey and Justin and Ross, making you a smarter football fan, our X's and O's guys, answering your questions, giving you everything you need to know to sound just a little smarter at your tailgate this year, or sitting in the stands, or watching on TV with your friends. Get a little smarter. Sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Get access to our full team of insiders, plus our community, very active and fun message board where there's always lots of stuff to talk about, especially now that football season is here. So sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.